Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel simply is Discerning What is True. Tonight's talk will be about a particular book called Psychology and Kabbalah. And the chapter I'm going to be dealing with, I think it's chapter 30. Let's see what we've got here. Chapter 38 called Personal Unconscious. That's what it's called, Personal Unconscious, chapter 38. So we've been doing these broadcasts for quite a while now, and I wanted to do one tonight. So let me adjust everything the way I'd like it to be here, and see if we can get into it. So thank you for being here. I'm on YouTube Live, and I'm also on Facebook Live, and Phil Langdon shared this with me. That is the information in the past, and I decided to look into it, and this is what I'm doing. Hopefully we'll do a show tomorrow with Phil Langdon live, dealing with the issue of the tarot cards, which is right here, and the Bible, the scriptures, probably the book of Revelations. And there's I think it's 22 cards in the major arcana with these. And I think we'll go, naturally we're going to be with this particular, no, I don't think we're going to deal with this book, but it's going to be about the issue of Kabbalah. So it's going to be Kabbalah, however you want to talk about it, the tarot cards, and the scriptures, which will probably be the book of Revelation. I think it has to do with the number 22. Which is also key in the steps. So this particular chapter is called Personal Unconscious, and this was written by a gentleman long ago, and he's no longer, he's deceased now. So let's get into the reading. I don't want to waste too much more time. The personal unconscious is that part of the psyche which contains all of an individual's experience. It holds the memories of what passed through the focus of the ego and has gone into the mind. An example of this is the detailed recall of a love affair, when every sight, sound, and smell is remembered along with what was said, felt, and thought. In contrast, there are also the recollections of dark moments, such as an accident in which each detail of torn metal and flesh, flashing lights, pain, and even oblivion can be remembered. Under normal circumstances, memories of the pleasant and goodwill be stored in the preconscious zone of the personal unconscious, because their potency does not disturb the ego's equilibrium or give rise to powerful defensive reactions. These susceptible memories can be called forth into consciousness by a melody of that period, a letter or a picture that brings back with astonishing clarity a myriad other things related to an epoch of perhaps half a century ago. Highly unpleasant memories, on the contrary, because of their painful charge, might never surface again into Yasada. Consciousness, because they are held back by one of the ego's defense mechanism, which confines them to the unconscious, so that nothing except some similar event, shock, or deep inquiry will evoke their presence, I should say. Their power, however, will nevertheless still be an influence which can surface in dreams or in momentary memory that is immediately suppressed. The personal unconscious is made up of millions of such positive and negative experiences. Some will be small and insignificant, others of moderate importance, and others of major account. All, to a greater or lesser degree, will have their effect upon an individual life. For example, a childhood incident, that is, such as an incestuous encounter that has been long repressed, could unconsciously continue to spoil adult relationships, while a not forgotten professional failure might dog every attempt to start up in that field again. How one may ask, can all these bits and pieces of memory even begin to influence the psyche? For they appear to enter in a most random way, some passing directly through the ego and others coming in via the side pillars. The organization of the personal unconscious may be perceived in two ways. Showing in figure 4 what we call guilt. Here's an example of someone about to break a religious or social or personal code. Being caught between passion and what he or she believes is right and wrong can generate a neuronic reaction or stimulate consciousness. It depends upon the conditioning of the people concerned. Such an event might be of no account to some, but others could carry the guilt for the rest of their lives. This is because while the ego might deliberately forget, the personal unconscious does not until the individual consciously comes to terms with the incident. This was a 16th century woodcut, which I haven't shared. The first is based upon Jung's discovery of the emotional and conceptual complexes that relate to the upper side triads of the tree. During his study of word association, Jung noticed that patients occasionally, that is, pause over certain words. Closer observation revealed that these words evoke a powerful response in the unconscious, which led to the conclusion that there were associated collections of highly charged memories which appear to gather around certain nuclear principles within the psyche. Thus, as every experience was processed, so the thoughts and feelings evoked were attracted by similarity to ideas and emotions, which were related to common links. These groups form over time into various associated complexes. An example of this might be when someone picks up a seashell from a mantelpiece during a party. As it is turned in the hand, so the memories of times by the sea might come up from the unconscious. Suddenly the room full of people might fade as all the sights, smells, and sounds of the seashore return. Perhaps a particular incident is recalled. A sad and poignant moment of parting in the last stage of a deep relationship that held such promise. As the person looks at the shell, he might remember the heartache and what happened after, which abruptly brings him back into the room and the party again. So he's showing here when that comes to that point, as I see, it doesn't want to deal with that. In other words, it doesn't want to go back to that memory. It's like, you see what I'm saying here, how he shows this, with Carl Jung. The present might then stimulate a new line of thought as the shell is classified scientifically, while the shape of the shell reminds the person of some work of art seen in a foreign country, which in turn evokes other memories that trickle across the Gesada screen. Such a casual moment can reveal many levels of memory which are part of a great interconnection web of associations. These in turn fall into various categories that form the structural and dynamics background of the vast inner universe of the psyche. Here we begin to see how the psychological tree is more than just a diagram. It starts to become alive with what is seen in it. A complex, as Jung saw it, was one particular grouping that had at its core a specific theme. One such complex might be everything that related to money, so that whatever touched this area brought a strong or weak response, depending upon the emphasis the person had given this subject. To one individual, money might not mean much more than a useful tool, while to another, it could be an obsession, resulting from either a current problem or early deprivation. In some cases, the loading of a complex might be quite even, so that a certain equilibrium, would govern the attitude to money, while in someone else this complex might dominate everything. And most people, a kind of working balance is struck, although many have their pet loves and fears, which may be expressed in day or night dreams and unconscious trends like the miser who is saving for a rainy day even though he is rich. Such obsessions or powerful complexes can, it was observed, from quite distinct entities within the psyche, creating what was called the sub-personalities, end quote. These operate in certain situations as independent units that seek their own autonomic. We all have our id, the nefesh, the drives, and psychological fantasies, but most people keep them under control or express them in hobbies such as sport and drama or games or art. But some individuals cannot find such outlets because they are simply unconscious of such drives. This sometimes allows the subpersonality a free hand so that a person is driven into a situation against their reason. The man who appears to be quite normal can become homicidal if the conditions are just right for such an event and remember nothing of his crime. This is because the mortido impulse and perhaps a hate-loaded complex is too deeply buried in the unconsciousness to be detected by relatives and friends, even though some odd things done from time to time would have been a clear omen to a trained observer. Such an event might occur when the balance of the psyche was sufficiently disturbed so that it could be triggered by some trivial incident, which was the last straw. This could release a festering revenge complex which turns the person into an avenger who kills whoever is nearby. Such is, of course, a psychopathic episode, but many people have these unintegrated elements in their psyche, although not to this degree. Carl Jung observed of this phenomenon, quote, such a person does not have a complex, the complex has him, end quote. From a Kabbalistic view, the personal unconscious is made up of experiences that cross the threshold line between Had and Nazad and are drawn to their respective triads. Some incline to the left, where they build up the structure of the psyche as they accumulate in the passive triads of emotion and concepts. Others do the reverse and add to the triads of emotional and conceptual stimulant. Once in the respective triad, they gather about a particular sephirah. Those concerned with general and particular information, such as learning how to drive or calculate, will collect around Had. Those drawn to Nazad will have the quality of action and rhythm, attraction and repulsiveness. Experiences that have the element of discipline, discrimination, righteous anger, or even hate would cluster around Jirala, while those associated with love, laxity, generosity, and powerful but positive emotions will be attracted to Hesed. Likewise, ideas concerned with law, principles, organizations, and reasons will cluster around Anat, and their moments that generate inspiration, vision, and revelation will go to that part of the psyche governed by Hukum. In a similar fashion, everything that is related to the ego will cluster into triads that serve Yesod, and all experiences relate to the individual's essential self will orbit the central sephirah of Tipharel, in the same way as all material concerned with higher knowledge and experience of the divine will be drawn to the deep and high sephirah of Dad, which is knowledge, and Keter, which is the crown, that lie beyond the personal unconsciousness in the transpersonal. The number of complexes and their components, when seen in terms of the tree, does not matter because all will align themselves with the 10 basic sephirah principles and their resultant triads and paths paths, I should say, not paths, but paths. These fundamentally will always divide whatever enters the psyche into active and passive, dynamic and structure, higher or lower, emotion or idea, in the same way that iron filings will arrange themselves into a field force pattern. This complex may not seem related to that complex, but on close examination, the chords will share a basic that draws them to a particular sephira. For example, all the thoughts about time have at their heart the principle of limits. So too does every emotion connected with loss. This would incline them to the left-hand pillar, where they might meet and relate through Jara, which would attract everything to do with karma, which contains elements of both. Thousands of such configurations are built up on Zarati forms which are contexts positively or negatively. These accumulate over the early years or as base layers, rather like the backing cloth of a tapestry that is continually being worked by the psyche. The general pattern of this ever enriching design is determined by the particular setting of the sephira at the time of birth, which gives a distinct character to the way the person responds to the fate that these innate tendencies make him or her live out. In most people, the internal buildup of the personal unconscious takes on a conventional form because there is not a high degree of self-development. Thus, the ego, which is socially oriented, generates a type of personality rather than a distinct individual. This fact may offend some idealists, but observations will lead one to realize that most people conform to what is expected of them by the super-ego idea of their particular society. The miners' strike in Britain in the 1980s revealed only too well the power of conformity in the mining community. The social condemnation of being called a blackleg, or scrab prevented many desperate, needy individuals from breaking rank and going back to work. Here, the personal unconscious is not sufficiently evolved to overcome the super-ego idea that holds the ego in place. True individuality is quite rare, you see, for the hippie or dropout, are just as conventional in their way as the conformists they despise. They too wear their uniform and have their rigid code. Here we come to the upper edge of the personal unconscious as it blends into the collective. Below this level, all that has been experienced becomes the matrix for a particular psyche in which the karma acquired is worked upon by the performance of the person in the present life. This is where Kabbalistic psychology considers what might be taking place in the light of former incarnations. For every life is a result of countless impressions that have been synthesized over many centuries. The woman who looks and lives like a nun is not just a spinster who cannot understand sex. She probably has a whole history of celibacy and purity suffusing her psyche. And the man who is a professional soldier might not be just working out his strong martyrdom drive, but learning about discipline, having spent his previous 3 or 4 lives being a layabout or a libertine. Both Francis and Augustine were sinners before they became saints. Some people require several lives before they learn their lessons. Most of us need many. What can be said is that the personal unconscious contains what we are at the moment. This, together with fate, defines the work that has to be done during the present incarnation. However, before we can come to know what we are, we must separate out the collective unconscious. So that's the end of the chapter 38 tonight from the book Psychology and the Kabbalah. So I hope that you enjoyed that talk. Appreciate you being here. Hope that you have a good evening, and I wish you well tonight. Again, my channel simply is discerning what is true. We probably will do another chapter here. That was 38. This is the next one will be called Collective Unconscious, which is a big deal. And that just reminds me just why people do certain things. And I would call it, in my own thinking, is in political science, is a herd mentality. Okay, it's just going along with the masses. It's another way. So let me get back to where I need to be. Okay, thank you for your time again. Hope you enjoyed it. It's supposed to be on Facebook Live and also on YouTube Live. Wish you a good evening and take care.